Hi everyone, and welcome to this evening's Baltimore Butterfly Sessions. My name is Annalisa Diaz, and I'm the Director of Artistic Partnerships and Innovation at Baltimore Center Stage, and your host for tonight's event. The Baltimore Butterfly Sessions is a civic dialogue series where we use art to catalyze conversation. And since we're not together in person, we hope you will join us in the chat boxes throughout the event to share your thoughts and questions as we experience a constellation of music, poetry, readings, and speeches. Before we begin, I want to take a moment to offer a land acknowledgement and invite you to do the same in the chat wherever you're watching. Baltimore Center Stage is located on the traditional lands of the Piscataway Nation by the waters of the Chesapeake Bay. These lands have also been cared for by the Lumbee, Lenape, the Susquehannock, and many Indigenous nations who are still here today. We pay respects to their elders, past, present, and future. And in the spirit of making erased histories visible, we also want to acknowledge that the many technologies we are using to come together today are built of physical materials that come from physical lands, which have been and will continue to be stewarded by Indigenous nations across the globe. The theme for tonight's event is, "It was always possible." Now, 2020 taught us so much, but one thing that became abundantly clear to me was the power and agency that we each have to catalyze change. When systems began to fail, people found ways to organize themselves toward care of ourselves and of each other. What other choices did we have? Many of us learned lessons from Black elders, Indigenous elders, and elders of color. We learned from the disability justice movement, from advocates for queer and trans liberation. We learned what they already knew, that it was always possible for us to shape change. But don't let me go on too long about that. Tonight, you'll hear music from Baltimore's own Darius Christian, poetry by internationally recognized spoken word artist Lady Brion, and an incredible dialogue between Pulitzer finalist playwright Eisa Davis and her father, Mr. Samuel Jordan, a leader in the Baltimore Transit Equity Coalition. You'll also meet a variety of individual artists and makers who we asked to tell us a little bit about what changes they're making with their practices. I invite you to listen and engage with the power of this incredible constellation of individuals and the unique perspectives that each of them brings to the virtual stage. I'll turn it over to Darius to get us started, and I'll see you in the chat.
I was thinking what I'd say. As I watch my fist go through your face. Hey! Don't think I won't fight. Oh, dear God, it's me. Hey, yeah, for mankind. I thought I'd reach out to figure out if you wanna hop off the sideline. Tripping up, I've been sucking down the sideline. How can someone be a god in the skyline? Time, dark sign, bloody as a wind chime. Sitting looking pretty on the throne as you watch us die. Don't think I won't fight. I will fight day and night, even if I lose my life. Now it's all on the line, face to face, and don't think I won't fight. Yeah! Don't think I won't fight.
Thanks, guys. That song is going to be officially released in February. But if you'd like to attain it, access it, have it, work out with it at home, sweat in this ridiculously hot, loud jacket that I'm wearing, get your own. This one, you can borrow it. Just let me know. Give me your email. Find me on Instagram at Darius Christian. I would love to get this song to you before it comes out for the rest of the world. I'll invite you to join a simple little email group and give you all the deets. So that was called Fuji. I wrote that one in Woodstock on a beautiful estate where my girlfriend and I were staying. And it was just us on just acres of land, and there was a pond, and there were some congos there. And I just went nuts with it and recorded this thing in a bedroom, and it is now Fuji. I hope you enjoyed it.
Thank you so much, Darius. It's great to have you back with us. And now we're going to move right into poetry by Lady Brion.
Peace, everybody. My name is Lady Brion. I am a spoken word poet, the cultural curator at Leaders of a Beautiful Struggle, and the executive director of the Pennsylvania Avenue Black Arts and Entertainment District. The poem that I'm going to share with you is really just a reflection of all that's happened during this time with the coronavirus, with the Black Lives Matter movement, and what's happening in our government. And also a reflection about what it means to be a poet during this time, what it means to be an artist during this time, responsive to all that's happening, and how we are able to motivate, able to heal, able to lift people's spirit, and also able to reach people in places that are often ignored, and how we have to value ourselves as artists because we have a particular role when things like this happen. And so I hope that you enjoy this piece. Thank you. I make myself small, crouching into the corners of my own thoughts, tucking the crumbling parts of myself into a ready-made I'm fine. I've learned the art of finding freedom in confinement, of flexing without ever being noticed, of following rules unwritten yet understood by my bones and my bloodline. I rehearse the tranquility of a casket, while praising and bearing witness to my own breath. I bend my back in remembrance of me. I unfold my shoulders in honor of this invisible tabernacle, and yet I have swallowed thoughts before gestation, reserving my tongue before it ever tries to speak, a cage of teeth and jaw and fear. I put my hands up when no one is around, practicing just in case my time comes. I move through the world with open eyes and closed mouth, my heart an open wound, a gaping sadness that does not yield to having to get things done, it just leaks. So I be a mess and a mop, cleaning and being a pool of untamed frustration interchangeably. Have you ever gripped a windstorm in the palm of your fists? Ever tucked a hurricane behind your eyelids? Battling rage is to take a shot, shatter the glass, and swallow the shards. I walk with my ancestors in step, with the weight of immature caskets for souls snuffed out before growing old, hashtags itching at the nape of my neck, forcing me not to forget names I should not bear the responsibility of knowing, memorizing death sentences like oratory contest Breon, like Tarika, like Ariana, all killed in police raids gone wrong Ahmad, like Jordan, like Trayvon, all killed by white men who thought themselves God, George, like Eric, like Christopher, all chokehold and no mercy. These nappy roots all wash, rinse, and repeat from swinging bodies hanging from noose and tree. And I watched the fall of the Capitol on TV, watched a live stream insurrection, terrorists close enough to touch, watched Trump ignite the dormant racism liberal multiculturalists attempt to ignore, saw the way it bore holes in the facade of freedom, of protection, of the Constitution, watched the truth of white supremacy peek through, watched the inauguration of a new administration and felt the stillness of nothing change. Felt the pride of the first female black vice president and the sting of patriarchy in the same breath. Watched so many black bodies be mowed down at Black Lives Matter protests just to prove they don't. All while bearing the weight of a global pandemic and all the corpses COVID has laid to rest. Quarantine got us feeling apart in isolation these days. So we sit in a deconstructed village, crying over a screen with our cameras turned off, all while iPhones continue recording police brutality to share on repeat, and how we find liberation still in the retweets. There is resistance in the posts and the shares. Somehow we push back in the same moment we push out tears. We take our art where the politicians refuse to go, where the policies do not touch, where the institutions are too bureaucratic to reach in time. My poetry be penicillin, be scripted healing. Art is a truth that refuses to be swept under the rug. The moment I take a stand, I render myself not small. And even on the days I can't protest or post or project beyond a whisper, my silent prayer be enough. I am enough. I feel in surround sound. My heartbeat be a bass and a treble. And yes, I insist on existing. Even when it is a disruption to the oppression that thought me unworthy of laughter or life or liberty, I linger a little longer, will not dissipate like smoke. In the fire of it all, I am the alarm and the burning debris. All I have left is a rage unquenched, a chasm of uncertainty, and the anger that accompanies an unknowing. And all of this is normal because I am human, a Black woman poet with no apologies to speak of, regardless of what you call me.
Y'all, every poem by Lady Brion is just incredible. Thank you so much for bringing that to us. Now we'll move into hearing from a variety of individuals who we ask to tell us what kinds of change they're trying to make with their practice.
Hi, I'm Adrian Wetzel, and I'm an executive director of a small theater.
Hello, my name is Quanice Floyd. I'm the Executive Director of Arts Education in Maryland Schools.
Hi, I'm Corey Diakino. I am an actor and an arts integration specialist and a co-executive director for Asian Pacific Arts Collective here in Baltimore.
Hi, my name is Jacob Zabawa. I'm a COVID-19 call center case investigator for the city right now, and I'm a teaching artist.
Hi, I'm Mel Harper. I'm a museum educator at the National Gallery of Art.
Hi, I'm Alicia, and I'm an arts educator.
One change that I'm working toward as an executive director is to only produce stories that empower and center Black women.
One thing that I'm trying to implement as an executive director is to transform, inform, and equip people so that we can create collective movement and collective power together. We are more powerful than we think.
One change that I'm trying to implement in my life and in my career is rather than saying yes to every opportunity that's put before me, I am asking myself more and more whether or not partnerships or collaborations truly reflect my personal values as an artist, as an individual, and especially as a teacher and a leader.
I'm always trying to change, both internally and externally, systems of oppression and destroy them. And really, personally, what I'm trying to do is learn my own limitations and also when to exercise my power. So learning when to shrink and when to stretch.
One change that I'm working toward as a museum educator is to make space for staff to do internal work at a monthly DEAI-focused discussion group. At these discussion groups, we interrogate our own biases and how they affect the choices that we make as museum professionals, from the choice of art that we hang on the wall to who we welcome through our doors.
And one change that I've been working to implement as an arts educator is to actively honor the creative communities and practices that I'm a part of, to never take them for granted. These are the spaces and people who have sustained me, who reflect me, and who fortify me for whatever comes next.
Thanks so much, everyone. Now we're going to invite Darius Christian back up to the virtual stage, and we hope to see you in the chat. We'll be dropping some questions there for reflection. Darius, over to you.
What's up? Darius Christian here. Thank you. Shout out to the Butterfly Session at Center Stage for having me. Such a stupid honor and blessing to be in a virtual room and hang out with you guys. I know 2020 was weird, deadly, horrific, dangerous. Every sense of what we knew as normal has been completely erased. It's been the big pause. It is, hey, what is it not at this point? And in the midst of this, as you can imagine, as all artists, all the tour dates were canceled, all of the shows were canned, you start to lose momentum in the sense of like, what am I doing? Why am I doing it? Where am I doing it? How am I going to do it? And I hope that's a feeling that you can relate to. So it led to writing this song, which will be available. If you would like to subscribe to my thread, send me your email. Find me on Instagram at Darius Christian. I'll send you the song before it comes out. That's the end of that shtick for this one. This song is called Where Do I Go?
Where do I go? Where is my home? Where do I turn? All I've learned, I don't know. I don't know, 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 I don't know. Where do I turn? Where do I? All that I've known, ever known. Where do I go? All that I know, I don't know. The ceiling cracks, the fading time, fading, oh my lonely mind, running around like a headless fool to see the light inside the soup. Oh my God, I need a sign. Show me, show me. My eyes are still wide. Show me, show me. I tried. This is a bad time, but I think that we should think about everything that we thought about when we think of the things that we thought about. I'm a son of a gun with some ribbon on. She can bake me some cake with some cinnamon. Call me butterball, always when you call. Just a big kid, but I'm growing tall. So this is a time when the thing in your head is a nightmare. Chasing the demons that don't care. The red in your eyes is in full flare. So time out, you're in last place. Shut your mouth hole, you can save face, just forget it. Listen, don't you forget it. The ceiling cracks, the fading time, fading, oh my lonely mind. We're running around like a headless fool to see the light inside the soup. Oh my God, I need a sign. Show me, show me. My eyes are bursting wide. Show me, show me. I tried. Try.
Oof. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Darius. Now, everyone, it's my great honor to introduce Eisa Davis, who will be in dialogue with her father, Samuel Jordan. If you haven't read their bios in the program yet, please, I encourage you to do that. We'll drop a link to that in the chat right now. But suffice to say that we are so lucky to have them with us tonight. Eisa Davis is a Pulitzer finalist playwright and an Obie award-winning actor. She's also a songwriter and a TV writer. Basically, what doesn't she do? Samuel Jordan is currently a leader and founder of the Baltimore Transit Equity Coalition, and he's been a political activist for decades between both Baltimore and DC, internationally and nationally. His work spans transit equity to anti-death penalty legislation to DC statehood. So with no further ado, Eisa Davis in conversation with her father, Samuel Jordan.
Hi, I'm Eisa Davis, and I am in Brooklyn on Lenape-Hoking, the land of the Lenape.
Good morning. I'm Samuel Jordan. I'm speaking to you from the non-ceded land of the Piscataway in occupied Baltimore.
And you are my father, aren't you?
I'm a proud father of an exceptional daughter.
Well, I'm so glad that we could have a chance to talk. I am really interested in hearing what it is that you are going to be able to share with us about the work that you're doing, because the themes of this entire butterfly session from Baltimore Center Stage is thinking about self-determination, thinking about not ceding that land, thinking about how peoples, individuals, groups, movements have continued to have a sense of agency and sovereignty through imagining and dreaming forth the worlds that they want to create, that we want to create, and how cultural workers do that, how activists do that, and that we are Imagineers, right? And that there is much more overlap between the artists and the advocates, the political activists. And I would call myself a cultural worker. And I think I'm right in characterizing what you do as political activism. Do you want to tell me a little bit about what it is that you do now in
Well,
Baltimore?
I want to make sure that I capture and help build on a few things you've mentioned. In fact, there are several themes of importance to me, but important to me certainly is evolution, my own work, my own consciousness in a sense, but the scale at which I approach certain problems now has evolved. I also want to speak to this matter that you just mentioned about agency. You know, very important to the work that I'm involved in now is that we want to make certain that the individuals, the persons, the activists who join with us in this work, the Baltimore Transit Equity Coalition we'll speak about, understand that their role is always pivotal. The role of, it's not to exalt or praise individualism, but to speak about the role and commitment of the individual and what that contributes, because we're going to talk about interdependence and how interdependence is the basis of the solidarity that will give us the advantage over, for example, white supremacy.
Right.
That response, solidarity, political strategy, political coalition and collaboration is superior to white supremacy. We've seen that in the recent insurrection, that it is totally incapable of governing, always has been. Its only contribution is violence, the threat of violence, and suppression of development for everyone, but not good governance.
Mm-hmm. So tell me how this model of interdependence really plays out in a specific way with the work that you're doing with Baltimore Transit Equity Coalition.
Well, a good example is just recently, December 21st, we conducted a celebration. We called it the Baltimore Transportation Equity Solidarity Day. It had three themes. The first was to express our appreciation for and solidarity with essential workers, transit workers, transit riders, and everyone of goodwill who understood the need to fight for transit equity, but also the transformative economic development that completion of the Red Line Light Rail project and a regional transportation authority would provide for the region. So we always want to keep the connection between the fight for transit equity against structural racism and how that itself is the key to the kind of development and progress we need here in Baltimore. So there's an organic linkage, but a material outcome. We were not simply involved in protest,
Right.
but in identifying a concrete goal that itself produces the difference in the way we live and in the way we understand the continued fight to transform the society. We're in a fight for the life of this society.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And something that you told me once, which really surprised me, was how access to proper public transportation is actually the biggest factor in development, in family income mobility. And I just wondered if you could talk a little bit about that, because people think more about education or housing, and you're saying that it's actually access to transit that is more predictive of, yeah.
It is, and in fact, it's been confirmed by authoritative studies.
Mm-hmm.
For example, in 2015, the Raj and Chetty study in Harvard addressed that very issue. What are the indicators or best indicators of, for example, upward mobility for a family, particularly as children? And it was found that access to transportation, ease of access to transportation was a greater indicator of upward mobility than, for example, the number of two-parent households in the neighborhood,
Mm-hmm.
good grades in school,
Mm-hmm.
or crime-free neighborhood.
Mm-hmm.
Access to transportation was a greater indicator of that family or that child's possibilities, options, and opportunities for upward mobility.
Mm-hmm.
But what we know also, and this is sort of, it isn't simply suspended there somewhere in the ether, but public transportation is possibly the single most important intersectional force in a society.
Mm-hmm.
We call it a force multiplier.
Mm-hmm.
But our allies in this struggle are those who are also addressing this issue of these issues: housing, education, employment, healthcare, food security. Well, they also happen to be addressing these issues in the interest of residents in Baltimore and other places elsewhere around the country who are in the bottom two quintiles of the income strata also in the country.
Mm-hmm.
So Black people, Black communities, low-income households, transit-dependent riders are all in that mix who are dependent upon public transportation because of their lack of access to automobiles. In Baltimore, at least 35% of the residents have no access to automobiles.
Mm-hmm.
And in some communities, that number is as high as 78%. For example, where Freddie Gray lived in Sandtown, Winchester, 78% of the residents do not have access to automobiles. So by the Chetty and Raj study, you would surmise that therefore they are not having a great chance and opportunities for mobility.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And then I think that there's a new fear around public transit, given the fact that we're in a pandemic. And is there a way that we can talk about how public transportation actually is part of what has been able to keep our country going while we've been in the throes of this virus?
Well, it's true that essential workers are also, for the most part, in that cohort in the society without access to automobiles because of their incomes. And that cohort, essential workers, are also transported by public transportation. Public transportation, frankly, at this moment, operates as the glue that keeps whatever is functioning in society functioning. Essential workers get to work via public transportation. But at the same time, there are elements in the society, and we can speak about them, who engage in the structural racism activity, who don't see that value, but have never promoted it either. Not only do they not see it, but this idea of public transportation as simply a cost or a gift to Black communities, freeloading, doesn't quite touch the issue of intersectionalism, and it doesn't express the structural racist basis for this attack on investments in public transportation. So we're asking others to sort of resist the counterintuitive effort to reduce investments in public transportation because of the pandemic. But you see, we've addressed this also as a matter of the shop doctrine, use of the pandemic as an excuse to reduce investments in public transportation. And that's what we're seeing for the most part, but it has no reason, it's not based in fact. And that's another issue that I'm sure you have addressed in your work. That is, when we can base our work on facts, then we reduce the role that racism, which is not fact-based, has in getting to and achieving our goals.
You haven't always worked in transit equity. You've been, you've had a storied career in various areas of social justice work. And I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit about some of those other issues, causes, again, that are all interlinked, as you said, but how those have also been expressions of agency, of self-determination, of dreaming forward.
Well, self-determination was an important, I think, element and drive and motivation. In each of these issues that may have marked my career, they were always addressing this issue of self-determination, that we are the architects of the society, that the only future we don't have to fear is the one we create for ourselves.
Trying to figure out a really interesting kind of pivot into the work that I do, which in some ways can feel like it's very removed, you know, from all of the work that you're discussing and that you're engaged in. And at the same time, I would say that being able to imagine as a person, as a student, as a worker, as a family member, to be able to do that and to be someone who is a professional Imagineer, right? As a playwright and writer on the screen, poet, writer of songs, and also as an interpreter, you know, as a performer, to think about the ways in which an artistic form of approach to the world, right, is liberatory as well. And that there is, and for me, there is an essential aspect to that, right?
I'd like to hear more about that.
Say what?
I would like to hear more about
Well, I think a lot, you know, a piece that I've been working on recently, it's called The Essential Isn't. And I titled it that because there are so many ways in which we as people of color, and particularly those who are descendants of captives, Black people, Africans on this continent, that, you know, there's so many ways in which we have had to imagine ourselves past our own present, right? Past our own captivity. And that imagination has sometimes been our only form of freedom, is where we can take our minds to when under abject oppression, right? And so in this piece, the essentialism, I'm fighting back against all of the markers of white supremacy, the ways in which we are expected to behave, the essentialism of racism, and what it does to our bodies and to our minds, right? And so the piece really is designed to keep questioning those notions and also questioning the concept of narrative itself and how it has been spoon-fed to us. That particularly a Judeo-Christian narrative, right, was something that was, sort of provided as a way for Black folks who are literally enchained to think, well, you might have it bad now, but you got heaven to look forward to, right? And I actually feel that, if I were to imagine myself, 16, 19, thereabouts in Virginia and Jamestown, and I had been stripped of my home and never, I think, of culture. I think that always is embedded in what has created, American culture, right? United Statesian culture, I should say, to be specific. And I think that there actually is no narrative that makes sense to explain what it is that we experienced, being shackled and forced to work and create the wealth that this empire has called its own, right? And so I've really been struggling with the fact that it was very hard for us to have a narrative to continue our lives by, a way to look forward into the future. That was generated by us and not just simply provided as a palliative, right? And that lack of narrative, that lack of sense, I think is something that we stepped into aesthetically. And that when you take our experience and you subtract the narrative and the sense, then I think what we were left with, which was an endlessly generative, is ritual, is our music, is our dance, our way of communicating with one another, all of the beautiful things that we have continued to gift each other and world culture with. And so that's what the piece is really kind of looking at, how do we survive through our art and through our imaginations and through our practices. And I know, I mean, it's so obvious, right? When you look at the center of world culture, that that Black folks who are the descendants of captives of slaves have created that very center, right? We created it. We thought, again, beyond where our bodies were, felt into where our bodies were also, and found a way to think, sing, imagine, dance, and live for our children, and for all of our contemporaries, in a way that allowed us to get by, how I got over, right? So to me, I think that our work as Black artists, all BIPOC artists in particular, always has this liberatory aspect. And that's something that the theorist and poet Fred Moten speaks about, that all Black expression has as its root an urge towards liberation and a breaking of oppressive elements, right? So Something I was thinking about is Elizabeth Freeman, who was once called Mum Bet and then took the name Elizabeth Freeman, how she sued for her own freedom in 1781 after she heard the what was to become, the Constitution, and already had been the Constitution in Massachusetts, right? How she sued for her own freedom. She said, well, if all men, and she considered herself that, she considered herself a human being, that's what they were referring to. If all men are created equal, then I should be free. And so she sued for her freedom. Who could have thought, right? Like, I'm a slave and therefore this is wrong, and I'm going to find my way out of it through a legal procedure. And she did successfully. And I think of that all the time. I think we just have to be able to change our minds, right? Towards the world that it is we want to live in, and that we know is just and we know is due us.
It's remarkable that there's a poetry in this. And I want to sort of address this sort of linkage, yourself and your artwork and myself as an activist, but they're artistic. In fact, I consider my life work as an activist my art.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But the key that joins us from what I've heard you say is that the role of the artist, the role of the activist, is not only to describe and adjust to things in their outward appearance, but to examine and present and act on their internal dynamics, reveal the internal dynamics. So there's a way things look, and that's superficial. But underneath, we see, for example, structural racism operates hiding in full view in the public square, okay? But we understand it in so many different ways because that is one of the roles of racist domination, to adjust the way we are conscious and the way we understand real life as we actually live it ourselves. So it's not uncommon to see a person acting against his or her or their interests. We always remark, how can they do that? Well, that's part of the victory of racism and structural racism. Now, the poetry, of course, is that the suppression itself has generated, particularly in Black people, an undying, indefatigable, unmitigated drive toward freedom. It will not be extinguished.
Right.
The irony is democracy just might be saved by Black people.
Stacey Abrams, I think, is
absolutely
an example of that. Again, there are just all of these ways in which I think of people who kept deciding, I'm going to find a way. I'm going to find a way, whether that's Madam C.J. Walker or, Too Short, selling cassettes out of his trunk, or Ella Baker,
yes.
organizing young people who are always the forefront of that dreaming, right? And of course, also in, very close connection, close blood connection is my aunt, Angela Davis.
Yes.
And thinking about how, I've had so many friends who've been like, wow, Angela's everywhere these days. What's up? And I think, there was maybe it was in Vogue, but there was some headline that said, people's consciousness are finally catching up to her.
But what you do culturally and as an artist, and in a number of ways that you've just described, what you're doing is making the basic truths more accessible. And when they are accessible through the work that you've described and the work with the power, gives it power, but it gives it radiant power. People who've heard her poem, not only the rhyme and the rhythm, but the accessibility to the truth of which she speaks. That is what was undeniable. That penetrates society.
The entire regional theater movement that created a Baltimore center stage was the child of an idea that there needed to be local theaters that were well budgeted, that allowed for a particular community to be able to, and a particular artistic community to be able to share their stories, the ways that they wanted to tell stories, and have it be accessible to everyone who lived in that community.
Wow, thank you so much, Issa and Samuel, for the knowledge, the wisdom, the generosity, and the joy that you just shared with us. And now, everyone, it's time for the final song of the evening, so I'm going to invite Darius Christian back up to the virtual stage.
Center Stage, I want to thank you so much for providing a platform for artists like myself and everybody else that has taken part. Shout out to the video editing and post-production. Everybody, you guys are giving us a reason to être. French, I am assuming it's French. Thank you guys so much. This is my last song. It's entitled Pinky Thumb. You can find it everywhere on the internet if you listen to music on the internet. It's called Pinky Thumb. Let's get it. Come on. Hey. Oh, yeah. Yeah. Let's break it down. Same night, different name with it. Damn right, spitfire, kick flip, spirit. Pass the rock back and forth like we playing tennis. Game point, love match, everybody cheering. I bust a vein winning, look at the scoreboard. Yeah, we stay grinning, cause it's love and war. I blow a gasket in my brain, it's a bloody sport. The bell rings, throw our gloves, and we hit the floor. It feels good, don't it? It feels right. Making love in the ring, what a sight. I'm like Tyson on your ear with a bite. A little scrimmage stack, nibble pack, nice. It's been a long time, I ain't drinking. I'll sip some fine wine, I'm just thinking. I drink the fire out of sippy cup. I had a boo-boo on my pinky thumb. We'll sail off our launching point. Tell me what you're waiting for. Love is loving, sometimes war. We'll sail off our launching point. Yeah, let's bring it down, yeah. Hold up and let me clean these strings. Fortune teller, come and tell me what these tea leaves mean. Trying to juggle lots of hustle just to bring in green. Climbing up hella vines just to stay on scene. Stay alive when the seasons change. You can take a lot of time and your energy. Gotta stay away from grime, it touches everything. Cause everything needs cleaning, everything needs cleaning. I was chasing diamonds in the stars. I feel anxious, oh my God, oh God. Tell me what it is, tell me what it is, I don't know what we fight for. You got me on my knees, girl, can't you see my peace signs? Don't go, don't go. We'll sail off our launching point. Pass the rock. Hey, tell me what we fighting for. I don't know, it's a bore. I don't wanna do another damn single little chore. Let's go. Hey, love is fighting, sometimes war. I'm like Tyson in your ear with a bite. A little scrimmage snack, just we'll sail off our launching point. I drink the fire out of sippy cup. I had a boo-boo on my pinky thumb. Yeah. Thank you guys so much. It was raw, it was raunchy, but let's keep it real, right? 2021, we're here for it. Butterfly Sessions, thank you for having me.
Thank you so much, Darius, and Samuel, and Issa, and Lady Brion, and all of our special guests this evening, and to all of you who joined us tonight for tonight's event. We hope that you had a wonderful time, and on behalf of everyone at Baltimore Center Stage, we hope that you will join us again on April 5th for the next Baltimore Butterfly Session. Good night, everyone.
Cracks, the fading time, fading, oh my lonely mind, running around like a headless fool to see the light inside the soup. Oh my God, I need a sign, show me, my eyes are still.